Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and today we're back with another episode of Player Spotlight. Now, for those who don't know what this series entails, it's basically where we go through some players who are on the periphery of the Socceroos squad, just looking at where their hopes lie heading into the World Cup in November, looking at if they're in or out of Graham Arnold's plans, just giving them a little bit of a player profile or a player spotlight, as the title suggests. As you can tell by the title and the thumbnail of this episode, it's going to be on Massimo Luongo, so let's get into it. So as we always do on this series, let's take a look at who is Massimo Luongo. Well, he's a 29-year-old central midfielder slash attacking midfielder. He's kind of a hybrid, as we'll touch on a little bit later on. But he started his career actually playing at APR Leichhardt in New South Wales before moving to the Tottenham Hotspur Academy, where he was loaned out to Ipswich and Swindon across 2 years before getting a full transfer to Swindon Town in the lower leagues of England back in 2013. This is where he played 76 times across 2 years. He went over to West London, getting a transfer to Queen's Park Rangers, where he played for 4 years, his biggest stint at any club, and he made 145 appearances, I should say, over those 4 years. He then moved on to Sheffield Wednesday before moving to Middlesbrough at the start of this season, where he's yet to make an appearance. Has been on the bench twice, but he's yet to make an on-pitch appearance. He's been capped 40 times by the Socceroos, I should say. He made his debut on the 6th of March 2014 as a substitute in the second half for captain at the time, Mile Jedinak, in a 3-4 loss to Ecuador. I'm not too sure many people can remember that game, but that was Luongo's debut. He did go on the plane to Brazil for the 2014 World Cup. Unfortunately, he didn't make an appearance in any of those three group games, of course. However, he did make his real name in a Socceroos shirt the year after in the 2015 Asian Cup, where he was very vital, as we'll touch on a little bit later on, in the Socceroos 2015 Asian Cup triumph, scoring twice, getting 4 assists across the 2 matches and earning himself player of the tournament, whilst also scoring that goal in the final, which we all remember. In 2018, he was named in Australia's 23-man squad for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. However, just like in 2014, 4 years previous, he did not make an appearance, both as a substitute or starting, which is unfortunate. But as we always do on this series, let's take a look at Massimo Luongo's player profile and do a little bit of a dissection on what he offers on the pitch. So as we always do on this series, let's take a look at Massimo Luongo's player profile. Now, the best way to probably start this is by looking at his heat map, as we always do, but there's some things that I want to identify and also bring up when talking about his heat map. Now, if you could identify and if you could describe an attacking central midfielder without being a true number 8 or a Mazzala and without being a true box-to-box midfielder, it's Luongo, because he's a tricky player to analyse because he doesn't really have a clear kind of role in most teams that he plays. He's very basic in a sense and very streamlined in what he does. He isn't a true Mazzala like someone like a Conor Metcalf who we've covered on this series, or someone like a Dennis Genero who we've covered on this series, or he isn't a box-to-box midfielder or even a defensive midfielder a la someone like a Cam Devlin. He kind of floats in between all three of them, and I think these average positions show it perfectly because he does do a lot of his work pretty much everywhere in the middle third, and that's something that with his last season at Sheffield Wednesday, that's something that he was able to really show, and that both his attacking yet defensive attributes, or his statistics I should say, were both fantastic, but it also shows that he's very fluid in what he can do and where he can play. He doesn't really have a weak foot in a sense, which obviously is fantastic because that allows him to just float either side, can pick up the ball on either side of the defence, or the other side of the midfield third I should say. And he doesn't really struggle in terms of finding angles or anything like that. In his last season playing for Sheffield Wednesday, he played most predominantly on the right or the left-hand side of a flat midfield 3 in a 3-5-2. Now, this allows him to, as we say by these average positions, this allows him to shuttle from side to side, playing as more of a traditional central midfielder, whilst also having a little bit of an attacking impotence and an attacking verve whilst in possession. Now, some key attacking stats that came from his time at Sheffield Wednesday last season is that he had 1.06 successful dribbles, 0.98 key passes per 90, and 11.12 accurate final third passes per 90. All those stats were per 90, of course. Now, what this shows is that while he isn't a number 8, he isn't a Mazzala like Dennis Genero, who we've covered on this series as an example, but what he does have is the ability to run up and down all day, shuttle across that midfield third, be a box-to-box midfielder whilst also being a little bit more attacking than a traditional box-to-box midfielder, whilst also having some very good defensive stats, as I'll just bring up right now. 3.5 tackles first for his side last season by country mile in a sense. He really dominated that start, as well as having 0.89 interceptions, which just shows his little bit of his football IQ, able to position himself in good places. But this shows that he both has a very good, or at least a competent attacking side, as well as a defensive side of his game, making him the perfect midfielder to play either side of a midfield two if you're playing a little bit more defensive, or even in the midfield double pivot, because like I said, he has that tank to run up and down all day. He has that ability to really show his class without the ball and with the ball. So that's something that Luongo has prided, or his game off, I should say, in recent times, as well as since that move to Sheffield Wednesday. He was able to show that ability a little bit more and show what he can offer both defensively and offensively a little bit more once he got that move. Unfortunately, we haven't seen it so far this season with Middlesbrough. Like I said, he hasn't made an appearance, but I'm sure that once we do get to see him playing for Middlesbrough, we'll see him smash it like he did last season for Sheffield Wednesday. Now, as we move on, let's go to his Socceroos career to date. Now, there is a tournament which I'll touch on in depth. We all know what tournament I'm talking about. I think that's the best place to analyse his Socceroos career. So let's get into that right now. So the best place to start analysing Massimo Luongo's Socceroos career to date is by analysing that Asian Cup tournament that I alluded to just before, and I alluded to in the intro of this episode as well. Now, like I said, he made his debut in 2014, and he has made some appearances after that tournament, but this is the real highlight for his Socceroos campaign. Now, he was very dominant. This was probably the best Massimo Luongo we have ever seen. And he scored twice and had 4 assists over the tournament, like I said at the top of the show, and also earned himself player of the tournament in doing so. Now, in this tournament and across the 6 games in which he started and played pretty much all throughout all those 6 games, is that he played either side of a sitting midfield pivot, or more than likely would have been Mile Jedinak, and he was able to play either left or right of that slightly more attacking double pivot, and this was the perfect system to get the best out of Luongo. Now, at that time, he was very confident in his abilities to pick up the ball from deep and drive forward, showing his dribbling abilities in spades and showing just the confidence and almost arrogance that he had on the ball, because he just knew how good a form he was in, and he knew that if any player was going to come towards him, he would just get past him with ease and just advance the Socceroos further up the pitch. He was also like this willingness to take the game on is something that the Socceroos really hadn't seen from a lot of players, especially coming from a central area in quite a few years. And we also haven't seen that from Luongo, unfortunately, pretty much ever since. He has dropped in and out of form, but this really was his highlight of his career, and especially Socceroos' career as well. Being comfortable in possession is something that the Socceroos have lacked for some time, especially during that period from their central midfielders, and Luongo having that ability to take the game on, and the willingness and the confidence to do that really added a different dimension for the Socceroos. Now, despite this, he was also, or I should say, in couple with this, he was very confident out of possession as well. Defensively, like I said with the stats from last season, he is very competent defensively without the ball. He likes to press really high up the pitch, likes to get stuck in. He's a very aggressive defender, especially high up the pitch. Now, it was almost like a perfect storm, because he played the perfect football in that tournament, and he really earned himself that player of the tournament. And even that goal in the final against South Korea really showed just how much of a flow state he was in. He was so confident in his ability, so confident that everything he'd do would turn to gold, and that goal lives in Australian folklore. So that's his Socceroos career to date. He has made some appearances since then. Like I said, he did make the squad head for the 2018 World Cup, didn't make an appearance in that tournament, but he has made some appearances in qualifiers since then, but has not, unfortunately, been able to replicate that form. So in saying that, let's take a look at where his future lies heading into the World Cup in November, and whether or not he's even within a shout to make the squad. So as we always finish up every episode of this series, let's take a look at where Massimo Luongo's future lies in the Socceroos shirt. Now, in all honesty, it will be very tough to see where he gets his next appearance, because he would really need to have a cracking season for Middlesbrough, despite not have been made an appearance for them so far. He would really need to have kicked on by the time the World Cup comes around for him to get into the squad, because he has been leapfrogged by other players like Rustic, Jackson Irvine, Dennis Genro, Cam Devlin. These players who are all playing in kind of similar positions to him will have leapfrogged him in the pecking order, and it's kind of a little bit of a shame to see, because of just how good he was. He has not been able to replicate that form, and like I said, the midfield stocks that Australia have are just too strong and a little bit too intricate for Luongo's. I hesitate to say basic, but it's a very simplistic and efficient way of playing football, which Graham Arnold almost doesn't really want in this side. It seems like we saw under Ange in that 2015 Asian Cup campaign, Luongo was a key cog in that machine, just because of how efficient, just how routine, how systematic he was as a base level, and having that confidence, like I spoke about just before, to add those little bits of spark in the game, or in his game, I should say, really made him the perfect footballer for a month. It seemed like he hasn't been able to replicate this form. I just don't think he can get into the squad unless Graham Arnold is looking for some experience, a player that has been there before, been in the squad, knows what it takes to play at World Cup level and to experience a World Cup, in a sense, for some of these younger guys who haven't been able to experience some top level international football. He can come off the bench if Graham Arnold would need him to be a simple player, in a sense, to come on, execute the simple stuff a little bit better and just kind of calm the game down. He's a good controller of tempo, especially when he's confident in possession. He can drop deep a little bit, control tempo, and then also make a couple of runs into the box to make an influence in the final third. He does have the engine to run all day, so that shouldn't be an issue if that is something that Graham Arnold thinks is an issue. It shouldn't be. He has the engine to run all day, has the tank to run all day, and he could be another attacking player for the Socceroos. But unfortunately, I would be very surprised if he makes a squad. If some injuries occur, I think he's a more than capable replacement, or deputy, I should say. That just goes to show just how good Australia's midfield stocks are. The fact that he is a person that is pretty low down in the pecking order of Australian midfielders. If he's needed, he'll perform to the level, no doubt, and he has shown, especially last season, he had a pretty good season for Sheffield Wednesday. So if he can carry on that form into this season with Middlesbrough, and if he's needed in November/December, he will perform to a good level, no doubt. But as it stands, with the fitness of the players who are already in the squad and in and around the squad, unfortunately, I don't see him being a part of Qatar, which is a shame considering the moments that he's given the Socceroos fans in the past. But that's where his future lies. I would hope to see him get a game. I would love to see him make an appearance in Qatar. Unfortunately, I just don't see it happening. So yes, that's been the 11th episode of Player Spotlight on Massimo Luongo. Thank you all very much for watching this episode. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Leave your thoughts on if Luongo can get in the squad, or maybe your favourite memories of Massimo Luongo. I think I could name a few that might be mentioned. Leave your thoughts on some more players you want to be given a Player Spotlight in the future. Make sure you subscribe to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. Like the video. See you guys next time, and goodbye.